Greetings to everybody in Montgomery ISD. Hello to all you bears and lions out there. I'm Steve Meeker, and we're here today again with Dr. Heath Morrison, our superintendent. How are we doing? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Very good. It's been a good, interesting year so far, but we're moving onward and upward, aren't we?
Interesting is one way to put it, absolutely.
Well, let's jump into some questions over here. It seems we always have to discuss COVID. I thought we were over with it back in the summer, but it keeps coming around in one form or another. First it was Delta, now Omicron. So what's the district doing regarding the new variants?
Yeah, I think it's that adage, everything old is new again. And so every time we think we've turned a corner with this pandemic, it throws another curve at us. And as a district, we continue to evaluate and try to think about what we need to do to keep our students and staff safe and then respond appropriately. So we had several meetings over the break and then meetings with administrators when we first got back. We've changed some things with our health protocols. We've updated staff and our communities about that. So Omicron, everything that the research says is that it is more highly contagious, hopefully less impactful in terms of if you get it. Hopefully you're not as challenged as Delta proved to be.
Right.
So what we did was to look at the CDC guidelines, and so CDC guidelines say that if you get it and if you start to recover, instead of having to be out the 10 days, it could be 5 days, and so we've changed that, updated our staff. Also make sure our staff knows that we are continuing with COVID leave. I know a lot of districts did away with that after the fall. We continue to offer the leave. We don't want to put our employees in a position of having to think about their own health versus their professional responsibilities. So continuing to offer the leave is very important to us. And again, the leave that we've offered is more generous than most school districts anyway. We want people to feel good about 10 full days. And then the most important thing is just to emphasize with students and staff, if you're not feeling well, stay home. And that's, there's lots of different ways people say that we can be proactive in addressing this pandemic. Trying to be social distancing whenever possible, frequent hand washing. But the best way is for people not to come to work or not to come to school if they're a student when they're not feeling well. And so exercising that personal responsibility is the best way we have to ensure that we're not spreading it. And then we've increased our testing procedures, offering more tests, and then also we're contacting local health providers. So we're offering another round of vaccines if people want to choose to do that. Again, vaccinations are not required for employment, they're not required for enrollment, but if people want to avail themselves of the vaccinations, we want to do everything we can to make them available to staff and the community.
Very good. The tests have been kind of hard to come by, so we've been able to procure enough, you think?
Before Omicron hit, we went ahead and ordered additional tests. So we have a pretty good supply right now. We've already ordered more. So knock on wood, right now, we think we can accommodate all the testing needs of both staff and students.
Outstanding. So, that's great. Well, now when you came a year and a half ago, one of the first things that you did was to get out into the community and what you called the road shows.
Yeah.
I know I poked a little fun at you about that. But
a little bit.
But these are meetings across the district and the community. You've been having conversations with staff and business and community leaders.
Yeah.
So what's been the gist of these meetings?
Yeah, it was getting back out to each campus and meeting with all the different staffs, getting out to our departments within the district to make sure that we're reaching out to all of our employees, having meetings at the various schools, town halls within the community, and then also meeting with different groups, whether it is former employees, some of our faith-based leaders, business leaders, just really trying to always ask the questions, what's good about Montgomery ISD, how can we improve, making sure they know about our new strategic plan, always asking for input, and really trying to be a good, thoughtful listener. The best way I know how to lead is to be a good listener, and so being superintendent is being chief communications officer in some cases, all due respect to my friend and colleague Justin Moreno, and the best way to be a communicator is to listen. So these town halls, these meetings, these road shows, really is just another way to listen and to learn.
That's great. Now, in October, the district shared the results of the external third-party survey that was completed regarding various aspects of MISD as part of the district's strategic plan. What were your impressions about the survey results, and what actions have taken place now that the results are in?
Yeah, first of all, I appreciate everybody who took the time to participate in the surveys. We had great participation by our employees, fantastic representation with our parents, really good representation with students. And that was really critical, was to make sure that the number of people responding really hit all of our different stakeholders and the demographics of our school district. And so when the data came in, the first thing we did was to share it with the board.
Right.
That was done in a public meeting, and then immediately was put on our website. As everything we do, it gets shared with the board, and unfiltered, unedited, it goes onto our website under transparency. And then really to spend time with our school leaders and our department leaders to go through the data and really try to figure out what are areas from those surveys that, again, there's broad consensus that we're doing really well as a school district, and where are areas that clearly show we have some things that we can improve upon.
Right.
And then so much of our strategic plan when it comes to our key performance indicators to set the goals and metrics for those relied on those surveys. So now that we have that, we've gone back and we've updated our strategic plan. We've updated those key performance indicators. So everything from perception of do you feel safe at school to how do people feel about professional development. There's a lot of areas we feel very good about, feel very strongly that we're doing a good job as a school district. And there are areas clearly that we can do better. And so it's all available on the website for staff, for committee members to look at, and we'll use those for school improvement, for district improvement, and to constantly revisit our strategic plan.
So the strategic plan plays a pretty deep role into the results of that survey then.
Absolutely. That's what we kept saying last year as we used that process, very proactive process, get a lot of public engagement, and having well over 350 individuals help us develop that strategic plan with lots of public input. It was not going to be a plan that was just going to sit on a shelf. It was designed to help be our North Star. And so we've done one round of the surveys. We'll come back and we'll do another round in the spring. This will be the only year we have to do two, but we had to do that to set the metrics for those targets and those key performance indicators. And then from here on in, we'll come back every spring and update the results, and hopefully we'll see growth in the areas that we can have growth in. Hopefully we'll continue to stay strong in the areas that are already strengths. And then areas clearly that it shows that we have to improve upon, those become potential considerations for budget, for additional initiatives to have improvement, ways to reach out to the community to find additional partners to help us. So there's lots of reasons why these surveys are a gift to our school district.
Now, kind of tied into that, the school board, the Board of Trustees, they also completed a self-evaluation in December. Can you share kind of about that? What was the reason for that, and what was learned from that?
I really appreciate our board. One of the first things that when I became superintendent they shared was concerns around evaluations, especially our teachers go through T-class, which is an extensive process, state-driven. But that was not TPAS, which is the administrative equivalent, was not what we were currently doing with principals or senior staff. And so this year we have our administrators going through the TPAS process. The board adopted the superintendent evaluation process through TASB. So everything's aligned, teachers, principals, senior staff, superintendent. And then the board took it another direction and decided that they wanted to do a self-evaluation. So they also used the TASB, the Texas Association of School Boards instrument. And really it's an examination of how they're performing at a very high level as a team of 7, a team of 8 with the superintendent. Are they setting the appropriate direction? Are they giving appropriate oversight? Are they engaging in setting vision, mission, direction? All the things that they're supposed to do as a school board. It's a great opportunity for them to look at and to do a self-reflection. It was guided and facilitated by somebody from TASB, so it wasn't just, hey, we think we're doing a great job. Matter of fact, our school board members were probably more critical when the TASB consultant was there. She was very much full of praise of the work that they're doing as a board. But I'm super proud of the fact that not only have they decided to take that initiative to do a self-evaluation, but they've really led us on a better path for evaluations for all employees in our district.
Very good. All right, let's talk about health insurance.
Yeah.
This was interesting. The board took action in December on healthcare coverage for the 2022-23 school year because of some new legislation that came out of the state. Can you share what was decided and kind of how that came about?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Dr. Meeker, for reminding everybody this was a decision made by the state legislature, and it was.
They've been at it again, haven't they?
Yeah, and again, in the spirit of it was really to try to increase the number and coverages that different state employees and school districts can avail themselves of. The challenge is that for school districts that have multiple providers, of which we had two, it does require us to choose one.
Right.
And as
so
I said,
only one health coverage, basically.
Yeah, and again, the emphasis not impacting the remainder of this year, but it is for next year.
Right.
And as I talked to different superintendents, because I started to get a little concerned about it when I heard about the legislation, because people are very focused on their health insurance. They've chosen the plan that is important to them, that they think meets their needs. So I started to get concerned about it, but as I talked to different superintendents across the state, they're like, yeah, we have two, but it's like 90% choose this plan or 75% have this plan. Dr. Meeker, we were about as 50-50 as you could be. It was, I think, 17 employees preferred one plan over the other. So we took this very seriously. Teresa Tipton, who was amazing, who runs our health benefits, when we sat down with her to look at this legislation and what it would mean, we immediately know we had to put together a strong communication plan, so we started making our employees aware of this right away.
Right.
She took the responsibility of going out to every school, every department to sit down and really give an overview, answer questions. We tried to provide as much information to our employees as we could about the different plans, what we knew about them, everything that we knew that were challenges and opportunities for this year, everything that we knew about the information, rates, coverages for next year. Everything we knew, we tried to make sure our employees knew. And then we also did a poll. We put a survey out. I will say I was a little surprised because I thought, while we tried to do a lot of information, it would come back very 50-50. It didn't, in fact, come back that way. The results of the poll came back with a preference for Texas School Health.
Okay.
And that's ultimately the recommendation we took to the board in December, and that is the recommendation that the board chose. So for the 2022-2023 school year, we will have Texas School Health.
Okay.
We'll do a really good job of making sure we inform everyone of what that means, any changes to their health coverage, anything that they're going to need to know. We're going to really try to provide that in real time for our employees and try to make that transition, if it's a new coverage for folks that have been with TRS, to do everything we can to mitigate the challenge of making that conversion. So,
very good.
But it started off with having to make that decision. We had to make that decision by December, and trust me, it was not the most fun meeting that the school board had to engage in. So,
especially when you have half people doing one and half doing the
yeah,
other.
it felt a little bit
currently.
like Sophie's Choice. It didn't feel like. But again, I was pleased that our employees took this very seriously. They took the time to get informed, all the information we put out there, and again, there was a very clear direction and preference for Texas School Health rather than to continue with TRS.
Very good. All right, let's talk about the calendar.
Yeah.
2022-23. Been a lot of work done on the school calendar. Or with that process, and what are some improvements in the calendar that we should expect to see?
As you kind of know about me at this point, Dr. Meeker, I'm kind of a process person, and our school calendar development over the last couple of years, I don't know if we could hang our hat on that it's been a great process, and so this was an area we put a lot of focus on. It's been driven by our communications department and our Executive Director of Communications, Justin Moreno, who's done a really nice job working with our DAC. And DAC really, it's one of the big responsibilities that is put on them, our District Advisory Council of employees, teachers, support staff, parents as well. And so they started looking at our initial calendar, the one that we have had this year, revisiting what are non-negotiables. And we say non-negotiables, but that really just means what are things about our calendar that this community and our employees kind of cherish. So 2 weeks off at winter break, when we start, when we have to be done by, making sure that we have appropriate holidays in the queue,
Right.
that first semester, second semester are somewhat balanced out. So all those things that are important, we just revisited. We put a poll out to get lots of input, got really good response from employees and staff members about that. Ended up at one point, I think, with 6 different calendar options that the DAC was looking at. And so you think, hey, with 6, we didn't need any more input, but we went back. And so as our DAC committee started to go to the different schools and departments, there was additional focus. And one of the big things was, could we add more of a fall break?
Right.
And so we even came back from the 6 and added what is now 2 strong recommendations. And so the DAC committee will come back in January. They will look at the 2 calendar options that we're currently looking at. We're putting another survey out that will launch very early in January. It's not asking people to choose between the 2 options. It's really, here are the 2 options. Here's what's similar.
Right.
Here's what's different. Can you give us any other input that you want us to consider? Sure. We'll take the results from that back to DAC, but then ultimately DAC will hopefully give us one strong recommendation for one calendar option that we'll take to the board for their vote in February. So lots of opportunities, lots of public feedback, lots of great conversations. And again, I hope our employees really get a sense of when we say your opinion is important and we're listening, because even with the 6, we thought we'd covered everything that we needed to, but as people, and when we were going out for those road shows, and people would come by and say, hey, you probably don't want to hear anything more about calendar, but have you thought about this? And when people said, have you thought about it? We came back to the committee, we went back to DAC, and so there have been some really great ideas. So hopefully we're going to end up with some really strong calendar options, and even something that's, it's a small thing, but we understand, and you understand as a teacher, our school calendars traditionally have not differentiated on the calendar itself what's a professional development day versus a work day.
Right.
Now, for a parent, they probably, it's a day my child doesn't go to school, so a parent may not care as much. But for a teacher, is this a day I get to work on grades, lesson plans, collaboration, or is this a day that the school or the district is going to require training? Yeah. So it's clearly marked this year. The actually aesthetics of the calendar, much easier to read. So there's just been some really good work about it. No matter what calendar option gets decided, I'm really proud of that work. I'm very thankful to everybody who's taken a lot of time on it.
Very good. Let's shift to a different topic. I was out walking around my neighborhood, and I've noticed that every place that had a vacant lot now has a house going up on it. There seems to be quite a bit of growth going on in our area. The board authorized the formation of a community bond task force earlier this year.
Yes, it did.
Who served on the committee, what actions did they take, and what are the steps with a potential bond and looking at potential growth of the district?
Yeah, back in October, we brought together a group. It was over 60 stakeholders. It was teachers, it was support staff, it was parents, it was students, it was taxpayers, it was taxpayers who have kids in our district, taxpayers who don't have kids in our district, parent leaders. It was a very representation. Every campus had representation. We tried to make sure that there was an equal division of bears and lions. And that group came together to look at a lot of the same data that our school board has been looking at over the last year. They looked at the demographic study that was done in the spring of last year that shows significant growth expected over the next 5 to 10 years. They looked at the facilities assessment that shows that, especially for our older campuses, there's a lot of needs that we need to address. They looked at the strategic plan and looked at things like technology, transportation, CTE, and they looked at all these, and very early on they had 6 meetings, and one of the first decisions that they had to make was what was consensus, and it was had to be over 66% of the committee saying yes, that's a priority, that's something we have to hold as an important decision. So one of the first decisions they had to make was, we think that we've seen enough data that we want to consider a bond, and they made that decision I think about the second or third meeting, and then after that it was, of all the different things that you could potentially consider, what should be some of those things that would go into a potential bond. So they've done great work. They culminated that work in December. They will be presenting what they've done to the board at the board meeting in January. And then the board in February, at the February board meeting, will have a very important decision to make, and that is, are they going to call for an election? If they do, then we'll go to the voters in May of this year and ask them to help us with potentially building a brand new elementary school, adding on to Lake Creek, CTE facilities, transportation technology, facility upgrades, some athletic considerations, and all desperately needed. But again, that decision will be made up by the board in February.
Very good. So now related to kind of growth as well,
Yeah.
Particularly enrollment growth, you made an announcement about limited open enrollment right before winter break. What went into the changes that were announced there?
Yeah, it's funny, looking at the history of limited open enrollment, it goes all the way back to Dr. Bob Smith, the superintendent, and there was lots of reasons why the district wanted to offer limited open enrollment, and most school districts could offer it. You wouldn't have anybody that wanted to come. Montgomery is a district that people want to get into.
Right.
But in looking at the demographic study and seeing the growth projections, it just felt the responsible thing to do, which was to culminate this as an offering for Montgomery ISD. And then what we also did was, you do a demographic study, which we did in the spring, so you think, hey, that's fairly recent. But we really wanted to see, were the data in that demographic study still holding up? I mean, you're driving around, and it's really easy to see all the growth coming in and the projects coming in, and we're seeing it, you're seeing it with the enrollment at your school, we're seeing it at all of our schools. But we just really wanted to make sure that we put one final touch on it. So myself and our Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations, Chris Lynn, we met with 14 developers, and we showed them the demographic study, and we said, hey, just between friends, can you confirm that what's in this demographic study you're still planning to do? And every developer said what's in that study, either we've already started, it's going to be bigger, or there's actually some projects in that demographic study that aren't actually in your demographic study that we've already got in the queue. So after those meetings, 14, that culminated the first week of December, that's when we said, listen, in fairness to any families who would want to consider limited open enrollment for the spring of next year, let's get that announcement out early. Let's also make sure that we're respectful of people who've been granted limited open enrollment in the past, so that they don't get fearful that it's not going to continue. So obviously, no brainer for our employees, it will continue. If anybody's been granted limited open enrollment in the past, they will be allowed to continue with it. If they have a sibling, so if you've got a third grader and a fifth grader, and then you've got an incoming fifth kindergartner, we will keep families together. But after that, we will start to sunset it out.
Phase
and
it out.
We're always continue it, though, for our employees as one of the ways that we want to, as a consideration for our hardworking employees in Montgomery ISD.
It's nice to be a destination that people want to come to, for sure.
Yeah, because when you offer it, no one wants to come. It's really tells you something,
Tells you
right?
a lot, right?
Yeah.
This is about the time of year that the district starts engaging with the public about the budget process. So what do you see as the priorities for the next fiscal year budget? You've made some real progress in budgets in the last couple of years.
I am excited about the budget process. I'm probably the only person that's excited about it. But the budget really, to me, everyone's got their mission statement, they got their vision statement, and those are all lovely, but they kind of all say the same things. I believe all kids can learn, and it's our responsibility to make, and that's absolutely right. But when I look at your budget, I see what you're prioritizing, and so we've put a lot of focus on budget. We had a challenge over the last several years about balancing the budget, and that was something the committee was not excited about. So we've managed to balance our budgets. Last year, we were able to do 2 pay increases for our employees, desperately needed. So as far as what are the priorities that I think are probably going to shape up, I think that work around employee pay will need to continue. I think we made some inroads last year, but as we start to look at the data that's available now from TASB, where they actually show you your salary schedules compared to everybody else's last year, I think it's going to show that we made up some of that gap, but we know that there was a large gap to be made up. So I think continuing to prioritize our employees in terms of their pay is going to be critically important. Making sure that we staff appropriately and well. We want to make sure that class sizes are good in Montgomery ISD. There's a state mandated class sizes at elementary, but we've actually been engaging our schools around, can we try to lower it at 5th grade and high school and middle school a little bit? What are some additional things? Last year we were able to add additional counselors at the middle school level. We were able to do some things at the high school level. So We want to make sure that we're compensating our employees well. We want to make sure we're staffing our schools well. There may be some additional programs that we want to consider, but those are the things we'll go out and listen to our employees and we'll listen to the community, and those will all be things that we're try to look at in terms of the budget. We'll present a budget to the board, a draft budget in May, and with a final decision that they have to make in June. So, but with lots of public input.
Very good. Well, speaking of public input, this question comes from some teachers on my campus.
All right.
Can you give us an update on, I believe it's Synergistic?
Yeah.
And how they're doing with the energy program that we hired them to do?
Yeah.
And kind of as a follow-up, this was a different year. Usually teachers were told to leave everything on during breaks, but this time we were told turn everything off and unplug everything during the Thanksgiving and Christmas breaks. And has that made any kind of tangible difference that we know of yet?
Yeah, so as all of our employees know, last year we did go to the board with a recommendation for a company that helps you with energy management.
Right.
And it's one of those things where you think, oh, I can do that myself, but then when you look at how they analyze and all the work that they put into it, you realize that it's just a skill set that probably most people in our district don't have. So Synergistic came with a lot of research and a lot of districts who have used them with great results. What I'll say is we're still really early in the process, and what is a little bit challenging in terms of are we getting everything we hope for, there's a little thing that most of our employees probably have been impacted by as well called global supply chain challenge and inflation. And just as you're going to the gas pump at the local gas station and you're paying a lot more for gas than you were a year ago, we're paying a lot more for gas as a district. So that impacts how we heat our buildings, cool our buildings, buses. So what I will say is without their leadership and support, we'd be really challenged right now in the budget process because while you tried to build in some numbers for increased costs, I don't think anybody a year ago was building in what we're experiencing now.
Sure.
So their good work has helped us be able to mitigate the challenges of inflation and rising energy costs. And we're continue to focus on that. And you know what I really appreciate about them is their focus is on energy management, but they're not energy management and thinking about schools and teachers and students second. It's what do you need to do to make sure that things are comfortable for staff, comfortable for students, and then starting from that place, then how can we save resources and find efficiencies through energy management. So they'll make a couple of presentations to the board. When they present to the board, we'll put that on our website under transparency, and I think it's going to show that they're making a really positive difference for us.
That's great. Any updates that you can share about the culture of respect? That was something you mentioned in one of our recent visits. So tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, I'm really excited about our Culture of Respect initiative. And this was it did not come out of anyone suggesting we had a bad culture. Matter of fact, quite to the contrary. Our culture is something that I think attracts people to Montgomery ISD. Our teachers feel it, our students feel it, our community feels it. And if you look at the survey results that we did in the fall, there's lots of things to feel good about our culture. But organizations that rest on their laurels, that take it for granted that your good culture now stays a good culture, it's like a garden. And if you don't tend to it, it starts to wither and starts to go a direction that you don't want it to. So we always want to put a huge focus on building a great and sustaining a great culture. And every organization that I've ever been associated with where the culture is really strong and it is a value add to the organization is one that's built around respect. And so as we started having those conversations during the strategic plan, that was one of the initiatives in our strategic plan. And so we launched this initiative early in the year. It's a multi-stakeholder group, representation from all of our different employee groups, teachers, support staff, different campuses, different divisions, and they've been spending the whole year going out to different schools, different departments, talking about culture of respect. What does it mean? What should it mean for Montgomery ISD? They've had many meetings. They've had their roadshows themselves, all being led under the leadership of Teresa Tipton again. So thank you, Teresa, for your leadership. And just as an update right now, they are very close to coming up with a communal definition of what that would mean in Montgomery ISD. And then once they've gotten that definition, we'll put it out there for public consumption. We'll ask our employees in each campuses, the different district departments, does this feel right? Is this the definition of a culture of respect that we think would work for Montgomery ISD? And then the hard work will be, if that's our definition, if that feels like a respectful culture, then what happens if you're in a situation where you don't think that that's your experience on your campus or in your department? And what are the processes and procedures we want to put in place to strengthen that culture and to give people an option to ask for help and support if they feel like they're in a circumstance where they're not being treated with respect. So all of that work is slated to get done by the spring. We'll present that to the school board. Once again, we'll make it public. It'll go on our website, and then we'll move forward, and it'll constantly be a focus and area we provide attention to.
One thing that kind of goes on that same line of thought, one of the questions that came up in one of our first interviews when you got here was from teachers on a campus about a cohort for teachers that want to go into administration.
Yeah.
And now we have that. I understand we have an administrative cohort that started. I was just talking with one of our teachers across the hall from me who's in part of it, and she's been really impressed with it. And I think that that sort of adds on to that idea of a culture of respect in raising people from our teacher ranks into administration that have those values.
And that's that part of that professional growth. And so we actually are going to be launching something soon about for support staff or long-term subs who want to go into the teaching profession. We've been able to get some state dollars to help launch an initiative that will help in that regard. So whether it's support staff, long-term subs becoming teachers, teachers wanting to go into administration, teachers wanting professional development and professional growth who don't want to go into administration. I've shared this before. Some of you have now had an opportunity to meet my lovely wife. She's in education as well. I always say she's the more talented of the Morrisons and everything. Everyone thinks I'm being humble till they meet her, and they're like, wow, he's right. She's never wanted to be an administrator, but she wants professional growth. She wants an opportunity to continue to learn to be a leader. That doesn't have to be as an administrator. So the more we can offer these opportunities, the more respectful that our culture becomes and the better our culture becomes. So it's exciting. It's just a number of different things I'm really excited about the future of Montgomery ISD.
All right, great. Well, let's talk about something else. About early part of December, I was in my classroom over at Montgomery Junior High around third period in the morning teaching a great lesson on the Roman Empire. And then we had an announcement that we needed to hold the kids in class for a while. And so can you follow up with what really went on there and what was the case and how the school responded?
Yeah, so things I'm not as excited about, but part of the challenge of public education today. It seems, last year with COVID, everyone got into school and they were so excited to be back. And, we're hearing from teachers and administrators, our kids have never been more well-behaved. And across the country this year, we're seeing, I think, some of the impacts of third year going into this pandemic and the social emotional toll that that's taking, and the TikTok challenges, and unfortunately the horrific school shooting in Michigan, and then a number of copycats where people thought, oh, wouldn't it be funny to call in and say that there potentially is a weapon in school? That is never, ever appropriate, and there's no part of that that's just horseplay or kids being kids. If you make a threat, we're going to take it seriously, and if it is made for the purpose of causing disruption, we're going to do everything we can to find out who did it and hold them incredibly responsible and accountable. And that just has to be. So we had a self-reporting mechanism at the time that somebody utilized to let us know that there was a potential weapon in the school. We had to take it seriously. Just from the initial diagnosis of what we were reading, we felt like it was more likely than less likely that it was not an actual valid threat, but we had to take it seriously. And as it continued to come in, we made the decision that we had to keep everyone in class. We had to make sure that we were searching for any potential weapon. It was disruptive to our school. It was disruptive to our district. It utilized the combined resources of local, state, national, federal resources. But within 48 hours, we had identified who was responsible for it. That individual has been held accountable for it. I'm sad that somebody made the decision to disrupt our schools that way, but it was really important for us to find out who did it. to make sure that we can communicate that if you make a poor choice to disrupt our schools, we are going to do everything we can to find out who did it and hold them accountable. And I just want to say I could not have been more proud of our employees at Montgomery Junior High School that day. They were amazing. This was several days after the school shooting, so there was a sense of nervousness.
It was still on
and
people's
fear.
mind. For sure.
Absolutely. But our employees were so calm, and because they were calm, our kids were calm, and the kids were phenomenal.
Right.
So I hope nobody reflects on the poor judgment of one or two individuals versus thousands of kids that day, hundreds of employees who just all did the right things and let us get through a very tumultuous couple of days. But I'm very, very proud of the conduct of our students and the staff and getting through those days.
It was an interesting time for sure, but I think that having been there in it, and your concern is for your kids and letting them know that this is going to be okay. We don't have to be afraid.
Yeah.
And we're going to be at our school, and it's a safe place.
And I think one other thing, Dr. McGarry, I'd just be remiss if I didn't say, the challenge that you have in these situations is there is no way that you quote unquote win on communications.
Right.
Because the minute we arrived on campus, we had about 17 minutes to decide where we're going to hold people in class.
Right.
And then after you hold people in class, you only have about maybe 5 minutes before people start to text.
Yes.
Why are we still in third period?
Right.
Why are they not letting us go to the next period? What's going on? And so you're constantly trying to evaluate, okay, well, what are we going to communicate internally? What are we going to communicate externally?
Right.
Are we going to go into a lockdown? Are we going to go in this process? It wasn't actually a lockdown. It was a holding pattern. There's so many factors that have to go into those decisions. What I'm really proud of is within 22 minutes of the initial diagnosis of where we were at, we had our first communication that went out. We put out 4 communications that day that went out externally,
Right.
more that went in internally. And I know for some of our families, it's not enough because they want to know exactly what's happening and why it's happening and what we're doing about it.
Right.
And all we can ask is for people to understand that we're communicating as much as we can, as quickly as we can. And as I've studied these things all over the country, school districts are challenged to get out one thoughtful communication as you're trying to actively make sure that you're keeping staff and students safe. That's the highest priority. And for us to be able to put out 4 during that day, I'm really proud of everyone who was a part of that. And also the leadership of Angie Chapman and the school administration, our school police, the support that we got locally across the state, federal. It took a village for sure. So
it was ultimately a positive thing, the way seeing how your school responds to something like that.
Yeah.
Not something that we wanted a disruption again.
Absolutely not.
If it happened, I'm really happy to know that people responded the way that they did. So.
It was. You always want to be proactive rather than reactive,
Right.
but when you have to react, I think everybody, and the training that we go through, a lot of times people are like, we're going to do that crisis, communications
Right.
again, or that, but there's a reason why we do it, and there's a reason why we update it every year, and everybody, that was school related did exactly what they needed to do, and
Right.
again, the composure of our teachers and our school staff, being as calm as they were, kept our kids calm, and that was a really beautiful thing to see.
Right. All right. Well, now looking forward to this spring, what's your number one thing that you want to see our district move toward, accomplish, achieve as we move forward?
I'm probably going to give you a different answer than you would expect. I have so much appreciation for this district and our teachers and our employees and our administrators. There's no doubt in my mind every day that people are coming into their classrooms, they're going into their departments, they're going into their offices, they're doing great work. All the things that should happen for our kids are happening. The fact that we got through COVID, the initial round of it, and didn't experience the COVID slide that so many districts across the state and country experienced. It was because of the caliber of what happens in our classrooms and support our teachers get, and just some heroic efforts by our educators. So as superintendent, I don't ever take those things for granted, but I am so appreciative of them. But I actually think what I want to make sure we're focused on is this year, as I said when I went out to those road shows that you were making fun of me about, this year does feel harder than last year. And I think last year was a combination of just everybody coming back, being excited to be back after schools had closed in the spring. I think it was the fact that when we came back, we all came back at the same time. This year with Delta, teachers were going out, kids were going out. There were teachers and kids who actually didn't see each other for the first 6 weeks of school. So it's felt so much more challenging this year. And that's not just in Montgomery ISD.
I think we weren't expecting it. We were kind of hoping it would be over, and then suddenly we were hit with it at the end of August.
And then we got hit with it at the end of August, but then that COVID tracker came down, and it looked like, hey, maybe we finally gotten through it. And with all the different things and COVID treatments and vaccinations, you're starting to say, hey, maybe this thing is going to get past us, and then Omicron comes around. So I think for me, what I just want to make sure of is that social emotional impact on our students, that we're trying to be proactive in making sure that we're taking care of their needs, and what are the things that we need to do to make sure our kids come to class every day ready and prepared to learn. But then equally as importantly, what do we need to do for our employees? I worry about the toll that this couple of years have taken on our teachers, our bus drivers, our food service. And so yes, we can pay them more, we can try to reduce class sizes, but that's only going to speak to a part of what we need to do to be really thoughtful and to create the school district that we need to, so that we can take care of those people that take care of our kids. So that's going to be a big focus for me.
Any final words you want to say before we go?
Well, it is January, so I just always want to say Happy New Year. And in education, we get two opportunities to think about a new year. In August, when we officially welcome everybody back, that's one new year. But New Year's is also another transition.
New semester, anyway.
New semester, and you make New Year's resolutions. And so I just, it's also a time to be very thankful for all the blessings we have in our life. And what a great school district, what great employees, great families, community. We can't take it for granted, but man, I am so grateful of all the great work that happens in our school district.
Well, we're thankful to you, Dr. Morrison, and thankful to all of you too for tuning in with us today. So have a good January, and Happy New Year to everybody out there.
Happy New Year.